as a subject matter expert, whatever industry you're in, you develop intellectual property, and that is a real asset. And you have to see it as a real asset. And it's saleable, it's licensable. And so you just don't give that away to anybody, or you don't give it away in perpetuity.
Welcome to the Fueling Deals Podcast, the podcast that teaches how to accelerate your business growth through all types of deals. It's time to fuel up, so buckle in with your host, Corey Kupfer.
There are only two ways to grow your business: organically through sales and marketing and providing great products and services, and inorganically through deals. Too many companies focus only on the first way, organic growth. Welcome to the podcast, which will help accelerate your business growth inorganically. My guests are a huge variety of deal makers and experts on all types of deals who have personal experience that can help you grow, get clear, learn best practices, and avoid mistakes. We discuss everything from large, complex mergers and acquisitions to smaller deals that you can do even without significant capital. My guest today is Bill Cates. He is an internationally recognized client acquisition expert, author, and speaker who motivates others to take action with proven strategies. As a successful entrepreneur, Bill started and sold 2 book publishing companies. Turning his attention to other businesses' growth, Bill has written 4 best-selling books: Get More Referrals Now, Don't Keep Me a Secret, Beyond Referrals, and Radical Relevance. Bill has delivered his business growth message to over 500,000 professionals, small business owners, and salespeople across 5 continents, helping them increase revenue without increasing their marketing budget. His client acquisition system has been featured in publications such as Success Magazine, Entrepreneur Magazine, Selling Power, the Huffington Post, and the Wall Street Journal. And his own business success has been featured in Money Magazine. Bill's also the founding member of the $1 Million Speakers Group and was inducted into the Professional Speakers Hall of Fame in 2010. He's one of 182 living members worldwide in that organization. And Bill is somewhat of an adventurer. He's trekked through the Himalayas of Nepal and the Andes of Peru. He lived in a houseboat in Kashmir, India, climbed Machu Picchu, reached the summit of Mount Kilimanjaro, camped in the Arctic Circle, and toured the country as a drummer in a rock band. Bill, what a background. I'm so excited to have you on the program.
It's great to be with you, Corey. And probably the most dangerous of all of those was touring the country as a drummer in a rock and roll band.
Yeah, even more. Listen, I just got back from trekking in Nepal, so we have that in common. We have being members of the National Speakers Association in common. But several of the things you've done, including being a drummer in a rock band, I have never done.
Well, it's the jealous ex-husbands at the nightclubs that you have to be careful of.
I see that totally. So listen, Bill, before we delve more into what you do, and then also some of the deals you've done, you sold a couple of companies, you do some licensing stuff I definitely want to talk about. I want to take you back to when you were a little kid growing up. What did you want to be? Because, owning a couple of book publishing companies and being a professional speaker, maybe that was it, but maybe not.
Well, truth be told, I don't know how many people I've ever told this to. I wanted to be a good humor man. I want to be the guy that comes around the neighborhood with the truck with the bells and has these compartments all over his truck where he reaches his hand in and pulls out ice cream. That was my goal, was to be a good humor man. And I almost did it. One summer job, a lot of guys do it as summer jobs, but the hours were way too long for me. Of course, now I'm working longer hours than I ever would have done there. But
and you don't even have ice cream that you can eat while you're working.
Although I can buy a lot of ice cream.
That's right. That's right. That's great. I love that. I love that. And just one more question from the past. What was your first real business, however you define that?
Oh, Lord. Well, all right, I'll tell you, I'll give you 2, I guess. The first business, but not qualified with the word real, is I started a newsletter in my neighborhood.
Okay.
The problem with the newsletter is that, I could use my mother's mimeograph machine and see if there's anybody on this podcast old enough to know what a mimeograph machine is. That could produce the text, but I had to actually draw the individual illustrations on each one of them. So that was a business that didn't last very long.
Love it,
because it was pretty laborious. But after that, the first business that I started was my first publishing company.
And so tell us about just a little bit about how you got that started and then
sure.
where it's led you.
Sure. I was reading a magazine. I don't remember the name of the magazine, but there was an ad in the magazine, and it was one of these advertorials. So it was an ad, but it looked like an article. And the title of it was "Dollars in Your Mailbox." And I'm thinking, that sounds interesting. Who wouldn't want dollars in their mailbox, right? This was long before the internet. This was in 89. This was like late 70s, early 80s, I guess. And it was essentially about selling information through the mail, like everybody does on the internet now. But this was long before that. So writing a book or getting someone else's book, the biggest book that they used was this, as an example, was this guy who wrote a book on how to get rid of moles in your front yard. And he put ads in the back of Popular Science and Popular Mechanics and places like that. And he just sold gazillions of these books. And so I'm thinking, well, what do I know about? How could I write a book on something and sell it? And I worked for the airlines. I worked for American Airlines at the time. And I thought, all right, I'll write a book on airline careers. And so I wrote a little book on airline careers, and I started putting ads, 1-inch space ads in the back of different magazines that I thought might attract the right people. And that was my first legit business, was selling that book and learning all the principles of direct marketing. And all of those principles still stand true today. Every principle used in selling that book still stands true today. Just we have different technology and different markets and different approaches, but it's essentially the same. And so that's what got me into the book publishing business, was that first book.
Oh, I love it. And so you ended up that turned into a company, and then you got a second publishing company. So give us a little bit about that, and also in terms of deals, you ended up selling those companies, right?
I did. So let's see. So what happened with the first one? It slowly morphed into a. No, I shouldn't say slowly. It morphed into a cookbook publishing company. And I wasn't a cook. I was a business person, or even a fledgling business person at that. But I ran into a flight attendant who said, I need a publisher. I need these people. And I go, that's me. She says, no, not you who wrote it. I need the publisher. I go, no, that's me. And so she finally realized that I published it, and she wanted help publishing a cookbook, just self-published. So I did that, helped her with that. And that's when a light bulb went off, Corey. Is like, people read cookbooks just for vicarious pleasure, even if they never cook. They collect these things. They read these things. Again, you couldn't get recipes on the internet. And so I borrowed $40,000 from my father, and I came out with 6 cookbooks, 6 very specific topic cookbooks. And I slowly grew that business, and I started getting spinner racks in stores. And I actually sold some specialty books to a lot of books to manufacturers of different types of cookware, a smoker. I did a smoker cookbook. I did, for American greeting cards, we did a cookie cookbook that came out around Christmas cookies. So I did a lot of that specialty type of manufacturing of books. Again, I didn't write any of these. I had authors who did it.
Sure.
And my biggest sale was to Bumblebee Tuna, who found my seafood cookbook and wanted to give it away as a premium in grocery stores. And they bought 400,000 copies of that book. And the joke is that sale changed my life, because I was the sales rep and I got a nice commission, and I was the company owner and I got all the rest. And so I used that. I built the business, eventually sold it. The other business was also a book publishing company, but it was more humorous books. We had some cookbooks. We had some other fun books. And that was with a business partner. So then I learned the pros of cons that many people on this call can relate to of being in business with a business partner. So that's kind of the evolution of how I got into that and eventually sold those 2.
So it's interesting because there's several deals that, in what you just described, and I don't want to skip over all of them. I mean, so the first one is, and this is something that to this day I'm amazed at. So, I'm generally amazed at how infrequently people use various types of deals, and and there's so many opportunities. So, going back to, Bumblebee Tuna and these other companies, so many of our colleagues in the National Speakers Association, who are speakers and authors outside of that, write books, and, they they try to sell them the traditional way, and most people may not realize that the average book sells under 300 copies.
Mm-hmm.
And 90 some odd percent of the books sell under 1,000 copies. And so few people do what you did. I mean, I happen to have David Bach on a recent episode. He's a good friend of client of mine. Has the Lottie Factor out now with the Automatic Millionaire, and he's used this strategy of partnering, with various companies to help buy and move and leverage lots of books. So talk to us a little bit about that, because even nowadays, so few authors take advantage of that kind of deal.
Well, you said the key word there, and you said it quickly, but it is the key word, and that is leverage. And some people see leverage as a bad thing. I don't. I see it as a way to create opportunity that has to be win-win, or I wouldn't do it. But in this case, it's intellectual property, and I don't care whether you're a speaker or any kind of business, a financial planner or investment manager, right? We are all subject matter experts, right? We have this we know things that other people don't know. And in my world, experts speak, experts write, experts find ways to get their knowledge out to people. And there's a lot of ways to do that. And you can have to one, and then you can have one to a few, and then you can have one to many. And there's a lot of models, and I like to do kind of all of those. And so what I saw when I first got started in book publishing is that, I could sell to stores, and the stores would reorder, hopefully. But my success of selling a lot of books was dependent on a lot of people. So it was good in the sense that it was diverse. On the other hand, I also saw that there was, all the cookware, all the smokers and the grills and the microwaves and everything, right? Crockpot, they all came with cookbooks. Well, they had to get somebody to write that cookbook. Most of them were pretty lousy. So I just started approaching those folks. Now, I'll tell you what made the difference for me, if you don't mind, real quick.
Sure.
My company, and this, some people may resonate with this, my company initially was called WRC Publishing, William Richard Cates. Meant nothing to nobody except for me and my parents. But I knew it wasn't really the strongest name, and I wanted to get in this business of doing books for other people so I can sell large quantities of books that I ship to one location. And I only had to make one sale to do it. And so I woke up one morning, I had an epiphany, and I changed the name of the company from WRC Publishing to the American Cooking Guild. Mm. Now, who would you buy a book from, WRC Publishing or the American Cooking Guild? And that was a big decision that made a big difference in my company. So when I now approached these manufacturers of cooking items, I had a little bit of cred just from the company name. Mm. So the company name you don't have to have a company name that relates exactly what you do, but when you have it and you have the right one, then you bring instant cred just through the name because it tells people what you do.
That's great. So I actually want to jump to the present. I'll probably go back and ask you about some things around the sale of your companies and your business partnership, because those are deals as well. But this thread we're talking about now, in terms of the opportunities to leverage intellectual property,
right,
is something that you still do in different ways. And listen, you are a $1 million speaker, Speaker Hall of Fame. I mean, you could, and I'm sure do, make a very nice living just from speaking fees, right? And you can go around the world and get paid to speak, and that's a nice business, making more money than a lot of people do. Mm-hmm. You still continue to leverage your intellectual property in ways that don't require you to make all your money from being on a stage. So I'd love to hear more about that, because it seems to be sort of an extension of what you were doing back in your book publishing days.
Sure. So what happened is I got into the business of speaking after I sold the book, the publishing companies. And, I learned pretty quickly the trials and tribulations of lots of travel. I also saw that, if I broke my leg really bad, or if I, God forbid, got sick or couldn't speak again, I'd be in bad shape, right? There's nothing else out there. And at the same time, I also learned that when I give a speech, while it has some impact on some people, the impact is limited, really. I mean, Can we change someone's life with a new perspective? Yeah, we can. But in most cases, that was nice, and most people just move on their way, right? So I wanted to have more impact at the same time. And ultimately, I wanted a business that I could sell. And so when you make it all about you, just around you, surrounded by you, nothing else but you, what happens if you get sick, right? Is there anything else going on there? It's kind of a flawed business model. Professional services in general, you gotta make sure that not just having disability insurance in place, but who's going to take over the helm if you can't do it, right? And most people don't think about that in professional services. So I was thinking about that, and so I wouldn't say I could never speak again and still earn a good living, because some of what I do is stimulated by me going out and about speaking and giving speeches and such. And so it's definitely goes hand in hand, but I certainly could not speak for a year and still make quite good living just through the sales of the video training program and I'm affecting and helping a lot more people. And what's easy about licensing my intellectual property is that the cost of sale, this is probably the best part, the cost of sale approaches zero, right? You think about even time, right? Even my time is almost nil when it comes to this. Once the deal is set, I have licensing deals with some large insurance companies that are in their 14th and 15th year. And to keep the deal going, here's what I do. You ready? You'll love this. I just did one recently for a company. I changed 2018 to 2019 in the agreement. And then I emailed it signed to them. That was my cost of sale.
Love it.
That's a deal, right? And I've got a bunch of those.
That's great. And so talk a little more specifically about exactly what you're licensing. Is it all video programs? What else? What does it look like?
Yeah, in my case, it is. In my case, I put it on video a long time ago. I've been doing video training, licensing for 18 years, again, long before the internet. The internet's made it easier in a lot of ways, but we started out with VHS tapes. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you a little bit about it. I mean, essentially what happened was doing some work for Mutual of Omaha, and they liked it, and they wanted to get out to more people, and they couldn't afford, so they thought, to take me to everywhere all the time, and they were hiring a lot, so they wanted an easier way. So we essentially made a deal. And here was a magical thing, because a lot of times when you do work like this for a company, they want to put their brand all over it. They want it to come from them, the corporate ego thing. Mutual says, we don't want it to come from us. It will actually have more credibility if it comes from the outside, that we went out to find you. That was music to my ears, because now I had a product that I could sell other places. And so we used their production studios. I gave them a discount on the licensing fee to offset their costs of the production.
Sure.
And then we started selling then they started manufacturing these video cassettes that I would start to sell other places. So we started out with VHS, and then we eventually went to DVD. And then now internet. I mean, 2 summers ago, I threw out about 60,000 DVDs and CDs because it's antiquated technology. And it would hurt me at first because they were my babies, like all these stuff I created. But finally, I just had to get rid of it. And so the reason I did it with me on video is so everyone would get the same basic training experience. It wouldn't be based on different trainers that I trained, and they would go out and some would be better than others. Everyone got the same consistent basic training experience. And then the facilitators, would stop the tape, they'd hold a discussion, they'd start the tape, hold the discussion, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, so I want to let's break this down in terms of your not only what you did, but I'd love to break down the mindset at the time, because we look one of the things that I know you and I have both committed to is serving people in general, and certainly serving entrepreneurs and serving our fellow National Speakers Association members, and I see so many people, because there's a lot of other ways that could have gone, right? What most people do in that situation is big company comes and says, hey, we want to do something on video nowadays, it'll be online, whatever, and we'll pay you X for that, right? So one way you can do it is they pay you a fee, you produce the content, and they own it, right? The other way you can do it, as you mentioned it, is sort of a train the trainer model, right? Where you go out and train a bunch of their internal people, and to redeliver those programs, and you get paid a fee for that. Mm-hmm. But you didn't choose either of those, and there's probably some others. You chose what I think is the smarter way, but the way that hardly anybody else does it, which is to do it in a licensing format. So talk a little bit about sort of the mentality and the decision making of, doing that, how you are able to sell that as opposed to just getting paid a fee. And maybe if you have any thoughts on the, maybe I call them limiting beliefs or, lack of awareness that a lot of our colleagues have that has them sell their intellectual property on a one-time basis, as opposed to having an annuity like a license going forward.
Yeah. So, I mean, when you think about it as a subject matter expert, whatever industry you're in, you develop intellectual property, and that is a real asset, and you have to see it as a real asset. And it's saleable, it's licensable. And so you just don't give that away to anybody, or you don't give it away in perpetuity. I mean, I've had some people who've come, I do a lot of work now with other speakers and experts and subject matter experts and helping them make sure they have the right content for licensing and how to structure deals and all the various aspects of making it happen. And, some people have come to me and they've done some licensing deals where they sold the rights to the material in perpetuity. Well, I'm sorry, but that's not a licensing deal, because if it's in perpetuity, you no longer own it, and they own it, and they can use it however they want. And so there's always got to be a time limit on it. They use it for a certain amount of time. This is what we get paid for. It's almost like if I give a speech, I had a guy who was working for me one time, and he charged a certain amount of money for a speech, and it was local. And the client kind of objected. He says, that's a lot of money just for driving up the road. He says, you're not hiring me to drive up the road and speak for an hour. You're hiring me for my experience and wisdom and the way I convey that to your audience.
Right.
Oh, yeah, good point. Right. So that's intellectual property. And so I to be honest with you, Corey, I don't know. Maybe I heard it from being a member of NSA, the concept of licensing. Maybe a mutual said to me, Bill, do you ever license your material? And I said, yes, not knowing what it was, and looking it up, But early on, I just learned that you don't sell that in perpetuity. I made one mistake with one company a long, long time ago. It was kind of new, a little needy for the money. And I gave a little small portion to them for a small amount of money. And I regret it ever since. I know it's cost me money over the years with that company. I could have done a lot more with them.
So what do you think it is? You work with some of our speaker colleagues, right, as you said, and what do you think it is? I mean, listen, obviously there's some basic stuff. Your IP's got to be of quality, right? It's got to be something people want. Yes. That's let's not skip over that, but that's table stakes, right? You got to have something that people want,
right?
But what is it about speakers that when they don't? Do you think it's just they don't know the licensing model? They don't value their I think, what do you think it is?
Yeah, I think it all boils down to confidence. I mean, with any entrepreneur you talk to will tell you that probably the most important aspect of them being successful is feeling confident about something, right? And if we don't feel confident, then we don't take action. And why don't we feel confident? Well, we're not clear on what it's going to look like. So we got to get clarity on the picture, on the vision, on what's possible. In this case, on the model, we get clear on what's possible around licensing. And then we gain the confidence that our material is worthy of that. And that comes a lot from, having done it enough and seeing the transformation in people. And, you really know you've got something that's licensable. That's hard to say. When someone says to you, how do we get more of you? How do we get more of this? We can't afford, to bring you here every year, or to take you to the whole, everyone. How do we get, and that's it. That's boom, licensing. That's the way you do it. And when you do it with video, then you control the product, which I also found is very important, that you want to have a certain amount of control. And as much as I try to have control, it's still an illusion, because they'll do it however they want to. But at least the core of the training is captured on video. So I think a lot of it's just lack of awareness and lack of confidence, and they're not sure what to do. And so, if I explain it clearly and show them what the steps are, then a lot of people will get it, but some people still don't get it. Part of it's thinking bigger, part of it's thinking that there's more here. It could be doubting their value. That when I first got started, I think just about everybody listening to this, Corey, can can resonate with this concept called the imposter syndrome.
Sure.
Right? Where, do I really know what I'm talking about? Do people seem to trust me? Oh my goodness, I guess I better do a good job here, and when I wrote a book, the first book, that helped a lot. But then after teaching it for a year and getting a lot of, I eventually realized I really do have something here, right? This really does make a difference in people's lives if they'll do it. And that's what allowed me to think bigger and charge more. And you have to charge appropriately for the market. It depends on who they're licensing material for what, and how deep their pockets are. But but just believing in your value and seeing the results you produce makes a huge difference.
Yeah, and I love that you're an example of that. And I love that you help people in our community do that, because I think there's so many more opportunities. And you're right. One of the things that I have a whole section in my Authentic Negotiating book on owning your value, and that's definitely part of it. And that's that's an internal journey that we all need to go through to get past that imposter syndrome, and know that we have something valuable to provide to the marketplace. So,
there's another way to license too, by the way, and I'm sure you're very aware of it, that most people don't think about, especially in our world, is where you can use the license. I, as a speaker, I, as an author, can license the rights to other things, right? So right. I'll give you one example. When I had the cookbook business, some folks listening will be familiar with a seasoning that got started in Maryland called Old Bay.
Sure.
Extremely popular in Maryland. It's what they put on the crabs and all that stuff. And Old Bay had a cooking contest. And so I offered to purchase the rights to those recipes and to use the Old Bay name and to come out with an Old Bay cookbook. And that was one of my biggest selling books. And so I actually had to pay them for the rights. I was licensing their intellectual property. I've seen this with other folks who do studies about different companies. You can do a study about a company, and then you can license the right to talk about that company. The company loves it. They're not in it for the money, but there has to be a contract in place to make sure it's, everything's clear, and what's expected and what's allowed. So it can go both ways. There, in licensing, if you start to get creative, if there's some, if you have a book about baseball, and you get the right to license the, Major League Baseball logo on your book, that's huge. And you have to pay a little something for that. So that's kind of the reverse of licensing. So it's a big world out there in terms of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely huge opportunities to be a licensor or a licensee. Yep. And I love that you're bringing that to light. So just quickly, in terms of, you've sold two companies, you were in a business partnership. Those are two other types of deals. What, any just big highlights, lowlights, lessons from those experiences?
Yeah. So the second company I sold was to get out of the company because I didn't like working with the partner I had. And so here's what I learned about partnerships, and people can relate to this too. If you get married, usually you have a courtship. You might be engaged for a year, you go on some vacations, maybe you live together, maybe you don't. But, there's this courtship that goes on, and, you agree on a lot of things. Businesses, sometimes, you meet for a couple of meals and you scope it out on a napkin and you think you got something. Next thing you know, you've got a business partner. Right. And all right. So it seemed good in the, the short courtship that it was, but what you don't know is how the other person's going to handle success and how the other person's going to handle failure or challenges. You don't know what their real relationship to money is. And every financial advisor listening to this can appreciate that people have some strange, weird, and varied relationships to money. And so what I learned is, you don't go into a partnership quickly, ever. And you really get to know who this person is. I had a guy who he gave me wise advice. He said, here's his philosophy is, and I was thinking of a partnership with somebody. He said, would you go into a partnership with this person without a signed agreement? Would you go into a partnership with a handshake? He says, I'm not saying you do that, but would you? Do you trust him or her enough to do that? I said, in this case, yeah, I do. He says, okay, that's a good sign, right? Yeah, get the contract in place. Keep the lawyers employed. But and it's important, obviously, because people change, et cetera. But that's kind of an interesting criteria. Would you do it without a contract? And if you wouldn't, just walk away.
I think that's great advice. That's great advice. Yeah, because listen, even as a lawyer, I always say to people that the purpose of a contract is two things. One is the thing that people think about a lot, which is, if something goes wrong, we have a document that says who has rights to what or whatever. And the truth is that that's the last thing you want to happen, but it's good to cover that. The other thing that going through the process of having a detailed written contract does is get what we lawyers call a meeting of the minds, meaning that it helps assure that the people have really thought through, the business people have thought through stuff and have really come to an agreement, and you're less likely to end up in a situation where somebody says, "Oh, I thought we were going to do it this way," or "I thought we had agreed on this."
Exactly.
But what I always say is that whether a business partnership works or not is largely unrelated to the agreement you have. It's related to the relationship. It's related to the shared vision. Yeah. It's related to the ways of operating. It's related to the ability to work together and listen to each other and respect each other. And, if it's going to go bad or good based upon those things, not based upon the contract.
Absolutely. Yeah. When you start looking at the contract again, it could be a warning sign.
Exactly. Hopefully you file that away and you never look at it again after you've done it. No question. So yeah, listen, business partnerships are tough. I've had some people on the show. I've been in my own, some of which have worked and some of which haven't. I was sort of laughing when you comparing it to the courtship situation because, us lawyers call it due diligence, So you do a lot more due diligence on your life partner than often you do on your business partner, and it's equally important.
And one of the things I learned is, you can have a partner without having a partner. And right. And you know what I'm talking about. You can have someone who is an employee of the company and they could be a shareholder, but they're not a 50-50 partner, but they're partner-like. And so they treat the business as their own in a sense, and you have a relationship so it's partner-like. And I think that's kind of an ideal scenario for a lot of people where, it doesn't have to be a 50-50 split or a 59, 51-49. Maybe they get a piece of the pie if there ever is any, but they're partner-like, and they will get compensated appropriately because of it. Maybe they make the same salary as you make, but there's still, you still have a little bit of that control that you don't give away.
Yeah.
And I think everyone could use someone like that in their business.
That's great. So Bill, I appreciate, we've talked a lot about the types of deals that you've done over time and what other people can do. Well, I want to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit more about what you do when you're not doing deals, when you're actually doing what you do every day, whether it's on stage or whether it's the type of content you're licensing and the type of clients you work with. I know that you, like me, do a lot of work in financial services, with RAs and other financial service people. So we have that in common. Yep. Tell us a little bit, more about what you do when you're not doing deals in business.
Sure. Well, I mean, the short version of what I do is I help businesses grow through relationship marketing strategies. What I mean by that is referrals, introductions, and that goes deeper and wider than a lot of people think. It's not just about asking for referrals, which some people hate to do. It's client engagement. It's creating a culture of being referable. Bringing in social event marketing is a piece of it. Content marketing now, which is huge, even for financial advisors. Most entrepreneurs can use a form of content marketing in what they do. So anything related to developing a better relationship and then leveraging that relationship for more business. My newest book, Radical Relevance, is all about how to talk about our value to other people in a way that really hits the bullseye in their brain, so they wake up and they go, oh, that's interesting, right? So we live in an over communicated world. Everybody's bombarded by all these marketing messages. We are, our clients, our prospects are. So how do you cut through all the noise and reach those people and get them to listen long enough to think that maybe you have something to offer? And so that's what my new book, Radical Relevance, is about. And they all fit together. If you think about it, the straightest line to be relevant in someone else's world, for you to be relevant in a prospect's world, is to get introduced from someone they already trust, right? So the introduction is still king in all of this. all the books I've read on marketing and personas and all this stuff, all these ideas, it's all good. But at the bottom line, if you get introduced by someone, who your prospect trusts and you can borrow that trust, everything else gets easier. And working referrals and introductions is the only strategy I found that will allow a business to grow without spending any more money on marketing. Everything else costs money. Referrals, introductions, the most it's going to cost is maybe a little thank you gift, maybe a lunch or dinner if you get introduced in person. That's it. That's your marketing budget. See, I like making money without spending money. That's why I like licensing. So that's what referrals and introductions are about. So that's what I try to do is help people grow their business without spending more on marketing.
That's great. And, Fueling Deals listeners, so obviously the focus of this podcast is on inorganic growth and deals. And the intro of the podcast, I always say there are two ways to grow your business, organically and inorganically. And inorganically is a way that a lot of people, don't focus on, which is why I focus on it.
Right.
But it is certainly not a replacement in any way. You have to work on your organic growth. That's the core
sure.
of it.
Even if a financial advisor buys a practice, the other stuff doesn't go away. Sure, they bought a practice. Maybe the clients, maybe they bought a couple of sub-advisors that come in from that, right? But still, the client attraction stuff still has to take hold. Marketing, sales, it's still there. But you can certainly grow a little faster through an acquisition.
That's right. So you really should be doing both. So, and Bill's a great guy to help you figure out how you accelerate that organic growth through all the things he does. And so he's not only given us a huge amount of value in terms of the inorganic growth and the licensing and the other types of deals he's done, but he's also a huge resource for you to get more referrals and build your business organically. So, Bill, I'm sure our listeners are really going to want to hear more about you and know where to find you and how to contact you. So what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, best place to do that. We have a bunch of free stuff to kind of bring you into our world first, right? So if you go to referralcoach.com/resources, and resources needs to be all lowercase. So referralcoach.com is the main website. But if you do /resources, you can subscribe to our tips. We have a bunch of reports and guides and checklists that are free. Check it out. Get a feel for what we do. If you like it, we can talk about other opportunities, but it's a great way to get in.
That's great. That's great. So, Bill, my last question for you that I always ask guests on the podcast is, authenticity is one of my highest values. And for me, authenticity is not about external morals or integrity. It's really about operating your business and living a life that's aligned with our inner truth. I do a lot of work on, I believe, and my experience with working with people in general, but certainly entrepreneurs, is that, our business growth is inherently either limited or available largely because of who we are and the work we do internally and whether we can line up to have that internal alignment. That's at least my theory. So yeah. So my question to you, I always love to hear is, how does that authenticity play in, if it does, and I'm sure it does, to how you make business decisions, how you design your businesses, how you do your deals, how you design your life?
Yeah, sure. I appreciate that. A couple things come to mind when you say that. One is sometimes easier to say than practice, but always do what in your heart is right. And I think that, unless you're a sociopath or psychopath, you have a moral compass. I don't care what religion or where you were born, we have that. Most people have the sense of what's right or wrong. And we, anytime we're trying to hide anything, there it is. There's a barometer, right? So living a life that you don't have to hide. And so being true to yourself and doing what you know to be right. So that's a principle to me that speaks authenticity that served me well. And hopefully, that comes across in who I am and how and on the platform too. I don't want to become this different person when I'm standing on a stage and speaking. Yeah, maybe I have to be a little larger than life, a little bolder perhaps, but I still want to be just who I am. I don't want to turn into someone else. Another principle, if you will, that's guided me quite well is always choose in the direction of higher quality. when you're making a decision, do we go with 4-color printing or 2-color printing? Do we go with the deluxe model or the economy? Always choose in the direction of higher quality for yourself, for other people around you, for your clients, your employees. And I found that when you do that, it not only do you end up buying better quality things that then represent you better in the marketplace, in the business world, but you also feel better about who you are and what you do. And I have a friend of mine who he talks about success. He tries to help other people be more successful, but he's the cheapest guy on the planet. And he won't spend any money on anything. And he always goes the cheapest way with the cheapest graphic artist and the cheapest this and the cheapest that. Well, that's not an attitude of success.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you have to live within your means and all, but just choose in the direction of higher quality. So that's a big thing. So that authenticity speaks to me, and I'm sure it means a little something different to everybody. I'll give you one more I found that served me well, and that is only fight honorable battles. We sometimes get caught up so bad in trying to be right about something. And, maybe we quote unquote win the battle, but we lose, right? When there's a winner and a loser, there's usually 2 losers. Not in athletics and that sort of stuff. I love to be competitive, don't get me wrong. But in our interpersonal relationships, only fight the battles that really matter, that really make a difference, that are true to who you are, and not let your ego get in the way and having to be right. And I found that really hampers a lot of people.
I love that one. There's two related expressions that I often say to people in those situations. One is, to look at whether would you rather be right or would you rather be effective? That's right. One. Mm-hmm. And then in relationships, especially in intimate relationships, with partners, whatever, would you rather be right or would you rather be happy? That's another one.
Yeah, being right's a booby prize sometimes. Maybe it feels good for a while, but then look at the resentment it could create that you're going to pay for a long time. So. And when you decide to be bitter about someone, or and you go after someone in a vindictive way, you're not fighting an honorable battle.
Go that.
Rise above it. Anyway, so that's you asked, I gave it to you.
Love it. Love all 3 of those. That's a great way to go out here. And Bill, I so appreciate you coming on. You provided so much value for our audience.
Oh, my pleasure. You bet.
And thank you, Fueling Deals listeners, for tuning in. Remember, there's only one difference between companies that grow inorganically and those that don't. And it's unrelated to size, amount of capital, or any other factor, other than that the owners and executives of companies that do deals make a decision to do deals. And then they take action. It's time to refuel. So until next week, Corey Kupfer signing out.
Thank you again for tuning in. Be sure to leave Fueling Deals a rating and review on iTunes and Google. Check out all our episodes at fuelingdeals.com to find out more resources to accelerate your business growth.